How's it going, Guardians? It is your boy Turkey here at SGN Hub, bringing you guys another Destiny 2 video. This one being a Titan build, especially given the recent rework to the Peacekeepers. And for those who aren't familiar, this used to be a very PvP specific exotic, but it recently got a pretty big change in my opinion, and it's bringing a lot more light to it in the PvE sandbox. And the exotic pairing that we are using along with the Peacekeepers is going to be the Manticore. And to just quickly explain what the rework to the Peacekeepers was prior to explaining the Manticore, like I said, everybody knows I like to get into these videos quickly without kind of believing talking too long. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and any improvements you can see with this, please let me know. I'll more than likely do a separate video just explaining a couple other weapons, but this one's going to focus primarily on Manticore. There's just too many things to go through, and it's very similar with Lucky Pants in terms of how you want to run it and the way that the build will function. Without further ado, let's talk about the Manticore, which is obviously a Void SMG, 900 RPM, and the exotic catalyst and the trait on it are phenomenal, especially for the rework. And the current perk on the Manticore reads as follows: dealing damage while airborne increases this weapon's output, damage output, and the catalyst really complements that well, and especially the Peacekeepers. And the catalyst currently reads as follows: while you are airborne, sustain damage and final blows with this weapon to difficult combatants grant an overshield, reduce combatant accuracy, and return ammo to the magazine. So kind of like a super cracked out version of rewind rounds. And it works really well in game. The overshield procs relatively often, and with the overshield changes that were recently brought into play by Bungie, this also plays into that, which is why we are using Void instead of Prismatic. And to further expand on that, let's talk about Peacekeepers and just go one for one and talk about what we're getting from that. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Peacekeepers used to be very PvP specific, but now the exotic perk reads as follows: while wielding a submachine gun, handling, airborne effectiveness, and movement are all improved, and damage against combatants will increase the longer you remain on target. Now, that's the part that is new. The damage will increase the longer you remain on target. Peacekeepers now add a stacking damage bonus that doesn't have a cooldown like the out of luck that is associated with Lucky Pants, but it's something that procs as soon as you deal damage. Each stack of this damage buff that you get from Peacekeepers will last roughly 1 second, but you are able to stack it up to 20, and each individual stack is granting 5% damage. So as soon as you hit 20, and once you see that on the left side of the screen as you're seeing the gameplay in the background, you are at the maximum stacks. And as long as you're actually able to maintain damage, you can keep on, you can keep those stacks going. And I found that to be a very satisfying loop, especially with the Manticore, given that you get ammo back, you get it while you're hovering, you get overshields, enemies can't hit you, they have decreased accuracy, and this was such a fun gameplay loop, folks. I could go over the armor and stuff really quick, but I think the mods and stuff are going to be really discretionary, since this is a build that kind of focuses more around a primary rather than multiple other things. It's not really built to do one specific thing. It just really shreds a lot of content, and if you have some of the new artifact mods, you can really mix that up and do some damage, to bosses and everything. My current loadout, I have this, I don't even know how to pronounce this, SMG, just to kind of deal with those longer range engagements. But typically I'd be running something like Lost Signal or Mountaintop to get the artifact bonuses that we have this season, with things like Rapid Impacts and also Concussive Reload, meaning that, if you break a combatant shield or use it to damage a boss, you get that weakening. So we're getting a lot of utility out of this kit. Now, if you want to look at the fragments and aspects, these aren't too complex. This one was kind of hard to choose between, but not quite. But the two that we went with was, first and foremost, the controlled demolition in our first aspect slot, which states hitting a target with a void ability or volatile explosion makes them volatile. Further damage to a volatile target causes them to explode, grants you and nearby allies health when volatile targets explode near you. So a little bit more sustain and some extra explosions and stuff in the Void subclass. I'm a big fan of the way the Void explosions look, especially whenever they proc off of a volatile explosion. Very satisfying noise, and I miss seeing it. In our next aspect slot, we have offensive bulwark. Now keep in mind, I did say that overshields were buffed not too long ago, so you're a little bit more tanky whenever you have that overshield, and this is going to play into the Manticore's exotic catalyst that gives us an overshield while doing sustained damage while in the air. And this reads as follows. While you have an overshield or are inside Ward of Dawn, your grenade charges significantly faster. You have increased melee range and damage, and melee final blows restore a portion of your overshield and extend its duration. You gain an additional shield throw while in Sentinel Shield. Now, some people could use Sentinel Shield if you choose. I'm obviously using Twilight Arsenal, that can play into it. But this is really just the overshield and the charge rate that we're playing off of. We have pretty solid stat allocation with 100 resilience, 90 discipline, and 102 strength. I feel like you can kind of balance between the strength and the discipline. That's just where my stats fell. Now let's talk about our fragments though. In our first fragment slot, we have Echo of Exchange. Melee final blows grant grenade energy. And I can kind of explain this one a little bit more and why I chose this when we go to our next slot. The next one we have is Echo of Instability, and this states defeating targets with grenades grants volatile rounds to your weapons. And this is going to be really, really solid for Manticore and any other Void synergy you have in your heavy slot, considering we're probably going to be running triple Void Surge or extra Void reserves, which is why we went back to this. Melee final blows grant grenade energy. We want to essentially be able to buffer that downtime on volatile rounds since we don't have a constant source other than getting it from grenade kills, but that really amps how effective the Manticore is at doing what it does. In the next slot, we have Echo of Persistence. Void buffs applied to you, i.e. Invisibility, Overshield, and Devour, but Overshield is what we're playing off of, and Devour occasionally, have increased duration. I mean, we'll actually be getting Devour a little bit more often than usual. And then lastly, we have after suppressing a target, you gain greatly increased mobility for a short duration, and your equipped weapon is reloaded from reserves. Defeating suppressed targets creates a Void Breach, and you get that obvious buffer to the +10 discipline, and we are currently using the Suppressor Grenade, which has one of the lower cooldowns on them. Not really a fan of the magnetic grenade. I just prefer to use the suppressor grenade. And that's really it for aspects and fragments, but the general play loop of this is, yes, you can do a lot of damage to overload champions, of course, but for all-purpose mobs and enemies, you can really tear through them, especially if you're rocking something in the primary slot, like I said, to weaken them, take advantage of some of those seasonal mods like a mountaintop or a lost signal or any other breach floater grenade launcher to weaken those targets prior to shooting. And the reload that you get is absolutely insane. It's pretty substantial, and I've seen it say +12, +24, +36. So you gotta think you're getting that ramping damage bonus not only from Manticore, but also from Peacekeepers, and you're getting an overshield. Targets are having a hard time shooting you, and you can drop grenades from up above, and this is just a really, really effective and fun playstyle for general purpose content like PvE, and I'd imagine even endgame, because it's not like you have to fly all the way up in the air and just hover and be a plain target for unstoppable champions or actual champions. You could just hover slightly off the ground and you're still going to get that extra stability and all of the utility that you would get from having the flying monster catalyst active on the Manticore. I think the rework to Peacekeepers was very much needed, and this actually isn't the only combination, and I feel like if I were to release another video on the other two, it might be a little bit too long, so be on the lookout for another Peacekeeper Titan combination video. It'll probably be maybe a little bit shorter, but this one probably more delve into the Parabellum, the Yarvit MG4, and the Anarchy/Witherhorde, the synergy that we have between those two. But as for now, I think the Manticore is probably my favorite SMG, and I will be swapping between all these and Peacekeepers currently. That's all I got for you guys here at SGN currently, folks. Manticore Peacekeepers is an insane combo, whether it be for onslaught, endgame, GMs, in my opinion. This thing cranks and does a lot more damage than I expected it to, and I highly recommend you guys try it. So, yeah, peace.